Where is insurtech headed next? This is where indie agents own the answer. Welcome to the Vertifor Insurance Podcast. Let's go. Welcome back to another episode of the Vertifor Insurance Podcast. This week, I have the one and only Garrett Droege on with us today. He is the Director of Innovation for IMA, and guys, he is going to blow your minds when it comes to how insurance and blockchain and some other technology like AI, machine learning are working together to carve a new future for the insurance industry. Garrett, welcome. I am so excited to have you on today.
Thank you, Sid. No pressure. I've got to blow people's minds with this. So, yeah, way to set expectations right from the jump.
You know, I like to set the bar high. What can I say? Take me back a little bit. Take me back to Garrett pre-insurance. How did you? Because most people don't wake up saying I want to be in insurtech.
Yes, I fall into that category as well.
Okay. Okay.
Very weird background. I actually started off in the entertainment industry.
Oh, wow.
Right. So that's unexpected transition into insurance.
Yeah.
But if you know anything about the entertainment industry, you tend to not work a lot. So I had a lot of downtime. In my case, I didn't work a whole lot. So I in the process, I started a tech company. I taught myself how to code in college. So kind of made sense for me just doing some freelance software development, web development type stuff. I was pretty good at that. So that's how I got into technology. We made a pivot one day and decided entertainment industry, not for us. Need to move. We were in Los Angeles, wanted to move back East Coast. So we did. Randomly, I landed at an insurance agency. I thought, yeah, I'll do this for like a week and then I'm going to figure something else out. And then my brain just like loved it because insurance, like software, is basically problem solving. I mean, you're just looking for how do I build something that solves a certain challenge, right? It doesn't matter the insurance product. That's what they're all doing. So my brain naturally does that. So I loved it. That was 20 years ago at this point. So I've been here longer than I've done anything else. But that's my way into insurance, was entertainment by way of tech into insurance.
I have to say, you're proving all the stories true that say that once you get into insurance, you don't really get out.
It's true. It's true. So listen, I have a theater degree. And
interesting.
I still say I use my degree more than anybody I know, including the people with insurance and risk management degrees, because so much of what I do is performative speaking. And it doesn't have to be on a stage or on a podcast. It could just be to an underwriter, or, I mean, it's all about communication, effective communication. Sometimes getting people to go a little bit further than they would naturally. And that's, the art of persuasion and being able to connect with people. That's what you learn in theater school. So yeah, it serves me well. I don't know about anybody else, but it works for me.
Well, it's crazy that you're able to be in both sides of your brain because, I assume with the tech side and learning how to code, that's very analytical, very logical, very mathematical in many ways. Theater's a little more creative, and not to say that it's not analytical. I mean, you do have to be to understand.
It shouldn't be, but
story arc, yeah. But there is a creative passion. You have to be in touch with your emotion, right, to have that. And so people tend to stay on one side of their brain or the other, and they don't really straddle the line. And you seem to be straddling the line, which is kind of cool.
Well, I'm terrible at math. And I'm a terrible coder because it took me so long. I'm very visual. I knew exactly what I wanted things to look like. But then when it comes down to like, how do you do that? It was a lot of trial and error and figuring out what are the shortcuts to get me to the end result that I want. So I'm pretty sure I'm more creative than I am analytical. But yeah, again, just weird skill sets that I've picked up through the years, and somehow it's positioned me incredibly well for what I do now.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Well, the insurance industry needs more creative people. So,
agreed.
welcome
Agreed.
and thank you for staying for the last 20 years. We're not letting you go now.
Yeah. Well, I don't know where I'd go. No one will take me, Sid.
So, okay, you went from an entertainment to insurance agency, but then ended up at IMA and doing a lot of really unique, innovative work. How did you find that opportunity, and what pulled you into this more like experimental space with insurtech, I would say?
So it sort of found me. When I got into insurance, I quickly realized. So I was a producer, sales role, and I realized no one wanted to talk to me about insurance. I was going after like general contractors and nonprofits and just the general stuff. And everyone's like, "No, kid, we don't. You're not for us." And then I started calling on tech companies, and I was like, "Oh, I get what you guys are doing." And I could explain that to an underwriter in ways that their 58-year-old broker couldn't do. So that's where I built my niche. I found a lot of success on the tech side, working with tech companies, startups that were sometimes foolish enough to let me stay on as their broker for much longer than I probably should have. So along the way, I joined this network called TechAssure, which is a retail broker network, brokers that specialize in tech insurance. And those were my people. And it was all these really great, innovative brokers that were working with, the Facebooks and the Twitters and, really large, complex tech risks. And I was in heaven. And the organization, there's a lot of moving pieces and it's a long story, but I eventually ended up running TechAssure. So I left the firm where I was, took over TechAssure. And again, I thought, I'm going to do that for a couple years and then I'm going to build my own thing because I know what I want and I know how to do it and I can do it better than everybody else. And 8 years later, I was still at TechAssure because I was having fun and I was good for that role and it was good for me. One of our members was IMA. IMA is a founding member of TechAssure. The organization's been around for about 20 years. So I'd known a lot of these people, and there's a lot of acquisition in our industry. A lot of our members were being acquired. IMA actually ended up acquiring 2 other TechAssure members. And along the way, I was like, you know what? I mean, if we're assembling the Avengers in one place, I'd kind of like to sign up for that. I don't know which superhero I am, but I'd like to hang out with them. Maybe I'm Ant-Man and all the real Avengers are, but I can sit and watch. And then, this role just kind of opened up for, I think they were in need of someone to assist with all the tech that IMA is implementing. So IMA is a founding member of Broker Tech Ventures, which is a insurtech accelerator platform. That alone is a huge workload, right? You got to vet 100, 200 tech companies a year to figure out who's going to make it into the accelerator, consult with these companies, mentor, partner, pilot. Like that's a big chunk of my Q1 every year. So there was that. And then also, how do you implement on top of the tech stack that you have? And when you're in a company like IMA, it's 2,000 employees. It's somewhere around 600-700 million in revenue at this point. So it's a big, very large employee-owned retail insurance broker. We have hundreds of tech platforms. And again, because I see things through both lenses, I've got the tech side that knows what plays nice in the sandbox. But then I also have the insurance side to know, which of these platforms are actually going to work in our ecosystem versus, oh, it's a cool idea and technology wise it works, but it's never going to work in our industry because X, Y, and Z. And this, your background, it's a very hard ecosystem to interface with. And a lot of tech companies early on, just like a lot of insurance companies don't understand how to implement technology. It's anyway, that's where I've been pretty successful, that I kind of sit in both roles. So then along the way, back to my creative side, I'm a tinkerer. I like building things. More than building, I like breaking things and trying to rebuild them bigger and better and stronger. I will disassemble anything and everything to try and figure out how it works. I've just always done that. I don't know if ADHD or what is it. But with blockchain, that's something I've played around with for a very long time. It's not new. It's been around since the 90s, the software or the architecture of it, but we haven't seen it at scale yet until now, until the last 5 years or so. And I was always curious, like, what could we do with blockchain in the insurance industry? Because it seems tailor-made for what we do. And wouldn't it be interesting if we started tinkering and playing around with different use cases? And so we co-founded this project called Web3 Labs. Our first project, which was very fun to pitch to our CEO, was can we buy a plot of virtual land in the metaverse and build an R&D facility to test different risk management theories for digital assets? And thankfully, and this is again why I'm at IMA, our CEO was like, I love it. Yeah, go for it. And so we built Web3 Labs, which you can visit in Decentraland. It's an R&D facility there that we do a lot with. You can hold meetings there. You can use it for education. And that was kind of the launch pad for Web3 Labs. Then we became the first broker to issue proof of coverage via NFT, was a non-fungible token. The pictures of cartoon apes that you see out there that are worth hundreds of thousands of dollars. You can also use them for virtually anything, any asset. So we thought, wouldn't it be cool if we put, and initially I said we could do certificates of insurance. Like, that's a perfect use case for blockchain, and we could use NFTs as the mechanism. Our legal team didn't love that we called them proof of insurance because of, Accord standards and whatnot. And proof of coverage actually fits better, right? It's more Web3 sounding. But that's what we did. We have a lot of clients in the Web3 space. So we issued proof of coverage via NFT for one of our clients. And these are all things that we're not necessarily trying to say, like, we figured this all out and we're the best at this. It's really just, here's a use case. Let's try it. Let's learn from it and share it with everyone. So we do press releases, and we basically give you the whole roadmap of what we're doing, how we're doing it. And I'd love to see other people try to experiment with the same technology, because I think there's a lot of opportunity, and by no means are we going to be the only ones that can play with it.
Okay, so there's so much to unpack here.
Oh, sorry.
Thank you for teeing. No, thank you for teeing me up here. Let me start with blockchain. There's a lot of people who hear the B word and have an idea of what it is, but don't fully understand or feel like they could wrap their hands around it. They couldn't re-explain it to somebody. And I feel like if you can't re-explain it, you probably don't have a good grasp on it. So for those out there who are, just learning what this is, what could you explain how blockchain works?
Yeah. And so this is not my analogy, but I use it and I think it works. So think of an Excel spreadsheet, right? And imagine that this Excel spreadsheet exists on every computer in the world. So we all have a copy of this thing, and anybody can add to it. You can't edit it, and you can't delete it. You can delete your copy of it, but that doesn't affect my copy or anyone else's copy. And so that, if you can wrap your head around that visual, that's essentially how blockchain works. So it's decentralized. That's a big part of Web3, blockchain, metaverse. Decentralized just means there's no governing authority, no one place that controls it. So we all have this copy, and none of us can affect the other people's copies. And it's permanent and immutable. So it can't be altered once it's on the blockchain. And is distributed, so we all have a copy. And the other two components are it's incredibly fast. So, think about financial transactions. Typically you use like Swift or some kind of mechanism for one bank to send funds to another bank in another country, transfer the funds. Typically takes days or weeks to get that done. Blockchain can interface virtually instantly once it's been verified on the blockchain. And it's very secure. So, people do think that, crypto easy for hacking. Not really the case with blockchain. Again, makes sense. If everyone has a copy of this thing, it's not so easy to alter every single copy of the spreadsheet. So once it's on the blockchain, it is pretty secure, and then each individual record is encrypted on the blockchain. So it's it is complicated. I could get really nerdy and talk about public, private, hybrid blockchains, but at its core, just a spreadsheet that keeps a record of something. Could be anything. Does that make sense?
That makes sense. That makes sense. I'm man, there's so many questions I want to ask. I'm curious. Really, I just have to ask this one. When you say it's secure, so I think the banking system would be the one pillar that they would probably push back on and say, no, this is why you want to use a banking system, because we have the infrastructure, we have what internal folks might call red tape, what external folks might call security, right? The balances and the checks and balances. Going out on blockchain, I think if yes, it's secure in that there is a full transparency of what's going on, but can you say that without that regulation, without that oversight, without that infrastructure, it's really secure? How do you feel about that pushback? And I don't agree one way or the other here. I'm just, devil's advocate. I'm curious.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's important. There's an Upton Sinclair quote that I like that is, it's difficult for a man to understand a thing when his paycheck depends upon him not understanding it. So it's essentially like, of course, banks think that couldn't possibly be as good as their system because that's how they make their money. So, I won't say that an exchange is as safe as going through a traditional banking institution. Absolutely not. It can be, and the in many cases, the technology itself is not insecure. It's typically user error that results in the loss of assets. So people clicking on links that they shouldn't. It's still a new world that people don't quite know how to interface with. They don't know how to secure digital assets quite like they do traditional US dollars. So I do think on the surface, there's some bad actors that are exploiting the system. But if you look at the percentage of lost funds in traditional finance versus decentralized finance, it's 1,000 to 1. There's more lost money in traditional finance than in DeFi, Web3, blockchain. So I think, and again, not necessarily getting into cryptocurrency, blockchain itself is very secure. Cryptocurrency exchanges, there's a lot there that could result in people agreeing to a bad deal. It's not necessarily the technology's fault.
Right. That makes sense. Okay, so moving into more of that documentation exchange as opposed to currency exchange, that's where I've seen the most, or I've heard that there is the most interest with insurance and blockchain. Is that true? So, for example, keeping a record of contracts, or I think about e-signature. I think about changes to the contract, right? All of that stored and recorded and sort of happening on blockchain as opposed to through email, through portals, through whatever else it might be. I mean, is that where you see the chipping away of the dam happening first? And, if so, where are we at in that process?
Yeah. So, I mean, I think supply chain is fully utilizing blockchain today.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where we're going to start matching that up from an insurance industry standpoint. But if you think about supply chain, you can, minimize emissions because you're able to operate more efficiently. You can identify redundancies, replacements. If you need to swap out one factory for another, you can track all goods in transit in real time. So I'll give you an example. Think about commercial fishing, right? And there's a new FDA regulation, Food Safety Modernization Act, and it requires traceability and record keeping. I don't know. I grew up with commercial fishermen in my family, and they were not people that I would say are great with record keeping. It was just like, great fishing, not so much in the paperwork part of it. Well, now these commercial fishing vehicles or vessels will, when there's a haul of fish, it will immediately encode it on the blockchain. So it's live on demand reporting that's far better than any system we've had in the past. And so if we need to trace that food supply to say like, all right, well, where did that salmon go that was caught from that boat on that day? I can tell you down to the individual person that bought it at the grocery store or the restaurants that it was served at. Like that kind of transparency is unprecedented. And that is utilizing blockchain today. So where I see us going as an industry, I think there's a lot of parametric insurance policies out there right now. So parametric policies that trigger automatically. You don't need to file a claim. You'll see that a lot in the cyberspace, but there's climate risk policies for farmers. There's one called Ether Risk that I love, and it's all around a smart contract that basically says if it rains more than X amount in a 24-hour period, the policy pays out automatically.
Wow. That's
really not hard to do if you have a trusted weather source that you could rely on to say, did it rain that amount in this period? And then GPS coordinates for where the farm is. Well, we know if this, then that, pay the claim. So you don't need to file a claim. You don't, it's not a painful process. It's just automatic payouts. So that kind of technology or product could only exist with blockchain. So I think that's a big use case. Smart contracts, I think all insurance policies they'll interface some way with a smart contract because I think it's inevitable. There's so much waste in our industry. I think being able to automate a lot of that process, it's going to be the way of the future. And you can look at like IBM, Deloitte, Consensus. There's companies out there that have billion-dollar consulting arms helping companies build smart contracts for virtually every use case. Yeah. So those are kind of top of mind right now.
Interesting. Yeah, I think about the example from Lemonade. This was, I think, 2 years ago when they published a video showing how their chatbot paid out a claim from someone who lost their coat at a bar. And there was I believe they had to send documentation of the coat itself and then like proof of how much it cost. And then from there, the system was able to put the money in the bank account pretty quickly. Right. So there was no human that actually touched the claim experience. It just all happened through that chatbot and through the
chatbot has like fraud algorithms baked into it, so it can tell based on how people are responding. You can hate technology and say, well, that gets in the way of what we've built, but it certainly makes a better client experience, right? That person who got that claim paid on that coat is telling everybody about that story, like how great an experience this was. And then they tell their friend, it was like, oh, I got into a car wreck and it took 6 months to get my car fixed because the companies were arguing. To that point, I think we're going to see, and Tesla can already do this, but cars that file claims automatically, like they all have sensors, computers, cameras around them. They can tell what happened in an accident better than a police officer can. And if they were all smart enough to communicate with each other, they'd share the insurance information between the other driver. They'd immediately file the claims. Like, what a better process. Like, we've just complicated, and there's complexity for a reason in our industry, because it's not as simple as an Amazon transaction. It shouldn't be, but there's so much friction. There's a reason people hate insurance as much as they do, because they don't want to buy it because they think they're never going to need it. And when they have to use it, it's a terrible experience. Like, what other industries, like, you have a product that no one wants and they never want to use? Good luck.
Yep. Agreed. So you talked about being able to put the first certificate of insurance, and I guess this is what you were talking about before with proof of coverage, proof of insurance on the blockchain. Talk to me about that. Like, how did that happen? What was the purpose of it? What was the result?
Yeah. So, I think certificates are low-hanging fruit for using blockchain in our industry, because I've always thought, and I've said this before, like, when I first got into the industry, I was like, all right, these certificates, they seem kind of important, right? Like, that's how you tell other people I have the insurance that you need, right? But as a tech guy, I was like, I could Photoshop that in about 5 seconds. So what's stopping me from doing that? And so I don't have to pay $40,000 for a CGL policy. I could just, give you a certificate knowing that I probably won't need it, right? How many people are doing that? And the answer is a lot more than you think. And how many people are buying a policy, getting a certificate, and then canceling the policy, right? Like, a piece of paper is a terrible way to verify that somebody has insurance coverage, which is very necessary to perform, commercial work, right? So blockchain would be perfect for being able to identify, does this person have insurance today at this very moment while they're picking up a hammer and swinging it in my building? And if I could verify that in real time, blockchain can do that. And so that was the idea. Like I said, we have a lot of clients in the Web3 space, and we thought, it'd be kind of cool to issue that as an NFT, right? So we could give them a digital asset. So they do have what looks and feels like a certificate, and it represents the coverage that they have that is verified on the blockchain, and it has some unlockable content in it as well. So they can share information or not share information with third parties depending on what they want. So if they only need to show certain limits or certain types of coverage, they can do that. So it's a pretty flexible tool that you could use to use as a certificate. Ultimately, I don't think we're ready to do that at scale. Very time consuming to set that up. You have to have a pretty sophisticated insured who has a digital asset wallet, who knows how to interact with NFTs. You can't just send someone an email and say, here's an NFT. You have to put it in a digital wallet. There's some weird tax liabilities associated with that could come into play.
Interesting.
The IRS considers NFTs, do they have any value? If so, then they're potentially taxable.
Oh my gosh.
Anytime you move them around, it's a taxable event. So there's some unintended consequences of using that technology. And at the end of the day, it took a long time to pull that off for one certificate. One proof of coverage. And that's my legal disclaimer. But we did it, and then we thought maybe there's companies out there, insurtech companies, that could build a model around this. And now there are a few that we're working with that are building digital certificate platforms that do exactly that. Verify, not just manage your certificate holders, but verify they do have the coverage that I need them to have. Because if you're a large commercial client and you have 500 subcontractors, that process is terrible. It's broken.
Yes.
And we don't have a good solution as an industry. It's like, well, call our certificate department and they'll verify for you. It's just, it's inefficient. And at the end of the day, it doesn't produce anything that is trustworthy. And so a digital version of that would. So that's why I think blockchain's perfect for certificates.
Yeah, the proof of insurance on the commercial side has always fascinated me as a huge opportunity, because I think about my experience on the personal insurance side of things. If I get pulled over in my car, right? First thing they're going to say, hey, do you have proof of insurance? Well, first thing they'll say is, do you know how fast you were going? Second thing they'll say is, do you have auto ID card? And I can just go on my app, pull it up right there, and show it to them pretty easily. And all of that's transferred. All that information is transferred to my phone as soon as I purchase the policy. I don't have to call anybody. I don't have to, wait 2 days for special language. I don't have to. It's just on my phone saying, yep, you bought it, and here it is. I think the accessibility piece is, we have to solve that first. And if along the way we can figure out, hey, we're time stamping this on the ID card so that we can validate the fact that the time that they're showing it to me, the policy is still in force, as opposed to they bought it and, or it's real because I know it's on a platform that keeps the contract live, right? As opposed to just a piece of paper that I could have printed off and forged. Agreed that the security piece, needs to be addressed, but man, that accessibility is tough. There's got to be a better way on that side of things
And the more companies experiment with this, the more ideas that they'll have, like better ideas than I would come up with. So we're part of this organization called the Risk Stream Collaborative. The institutes who produce designations like CPCU, ARM, they have a separate entity called Risk Stream Collaborative that is focused around blockchain's use case in the insurance industry. They've actually built their own insurance blockchain, and it's a private blockchain that requires verification to know, like, is this Chubb? Is this AIG? Is this Vertafore? And so once you're a known entity on it, you can transact with other known entities, and the use cases are almost endless. And there's one that I love. I shared this example a lot because I think it's brilliant. There's a bunch of life insurers that are on this blockchain, and they thought through, what are our clients' pain points in dealing with life insurance? And I'll tell you, if you've not had to filing a life insurance claim is about as bad as it gets, because it just means somebody you cared about is not here, and you now have to go and prove that they're not here to an insurance company, and quite honestly, to someone who probably doesn't have great bedside manner. They're not paid well. They're just a customer service rep who's like, I'll need a death certificate. And they hit you on the wrong day, and you're like, I don't like your tone. I don't like having to go through this process. I feel like you're, look at what I've gone through, and you're making me go through all these hoops. So what they came up with was a thing called the mortality monitor, which says, if someone submits a life insurance claim and it's valid, so we have all the things that we would need, but they filed it with a different life insurance company, we're immediately going to ping our database to see, do we also have that as a policyholder? And if so, claim paid immediately. Because we don't need, as long as the first life insurance carrier will supply us with that data, then they don't have to go through that process multiple times. So it's not perfect, but gosh, it cuts down, I don't know how many, I've got a few life insurance policies, right? It would make my bereaved much, much happier not having to go through that same terrible process over and over and over. So that's just one example of, like, we could use this in such a much more efficient way that makes people, feel like I got what I paid for, right? And that's, I don't think we've delivered on that very well over the years. Yeah. That was my biggest complaint, is it's the client experience in insurance is just about as bad as you could design. Yeah. No, you're right on the money there. And what was the name of that company? I'm definitely curious to look them up. The Riskstream Collaborative.
Riskstream Collaborative. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's open to, and I don't get compensated. So like full disclosure, I have no vested interest in this company. Okay. But we're big believers. So there's carriers that are members, there's brokers, there's banking institutions, and there's different working groups. So we have a big surety division. Our surety department works with them on creating the framework for using surety bonds utilizing blockchain. There's a first notice of loss blockchain working group. There's like 9 or 10 different working groups within trying to figure out, and again, just tinkering away in the laboratory, how could we use this to build a better client experience, a better infrastructure that we could all utilize? Because, again, take it back to agents and brokers, to carriers. We ask for the same data on policyholders, clients over and over again, right? It's just we have that data. Mm-hmm. We could pull that data from third-party sources. We could share that data with trusted third parties that are part of the equation. Like, we don't have to manual data input at every single level, client, agent, broker, carrier. It's just too much. Yeah. And blockchain could immediately solve all of that. So that's my interest with it.
Interesting. Yeah, I've not thought about that before, because you see a lot of companies now pulling third-party, data enrichment essentially into their tools and paying a pretty penny for it. There are startups that I know that are paying more for, data enrichment than to build out their core competency, which makes you wonder, has their core competency actually changed?
Yeah.
Because they're spending so much money, but it's almost necessary today. It gives them a competitive advantage.
Right.
Even at Vertafore, we're so focused on centralization, which is really building the plumbing underneath all these different, SaaS solutions and platforming them so that everything's in one place and everything works better together.
Right.
Hadn't really thought about, what if you just moved into this new world and it's pre-built, right? It's sort of already centralized in a way.
And I think that's the point of Riskstream is they don't want Vertafore trying to build its own blockchain and then insurance carrier building their own, and then they don't talk to each other, right? Mm-hmm. It needs to be, and that's like all this Web3 technology, whether it's metaverse or blockchain. We need to create some infrastructure and some rules of the road, like they did with the internet when it was being developed, to say, look, we can have multiple participants. We're just all going to do things at a high level with the same rules, same roadmap, so that, we don't have 4 internets, right? We don't need that many. Let's just all agree, this is how we're going to do it. And then we'll plug in, however fits our objective.
It is going to be so interesting to see how that evolves over the next few years. I will have to reach out to Riskstream Collaborative and see if they'll be interested in chatting. Let me talk to you a little bit about the metaverse side of things. I will be honest, I know a little bit about blockchain. I know even less about the metaverse. So treat me like a rookie here. Maybe just what baseline understanding? What is the metaverse? How does it work? And then, you guys said that you bought real estate. Who are you paying for the real estate? I guess in my brain, I'm thinking, well, it should kind of be a free for all at this point. So how does that all work?
Yeah. So, I think the official definition of the metaverse is it's an open source 3D world where users and potentially an unlimited number of users could have a shared virtual experience in real time. And I think that's probably accurate. That's like the Ready Player One, if you've seen that movie. Headsets, we're all plugged in. I think that's a decade or more away. Although, first week in June, Apple's going to drop their mixed reality goggles, and I think that's going to change the game like they do typically. But my version of the metaverse is a little different. Not everyone agrees. I already think a lot of ways we're in the metaverse already. Things like augmented reality, virtual reality, we can do that today. But things like social media is also, it's just an online community. It's a shared experience that we're having. There was an article that came out in Business Insider a couple weeks ago. It was like, move over metaverse. AI is the new king. Metaverse is dead. It died in April of 23. You could say that, but then you could also point that there's 600 million users on a monthly basis in the metaverse.
Wow.
Maybe not you and me, but certainly my kids. I've got teens and tweens. Roblox, Fortnite. These are metaverses, and my kids would prefer to have a hang with their friends virtually than in person. And a lot of people can't wrap their heads around that. And you can, scream at the wind and say it shouldn't be that way. That's how Gen Z wants to do it, right? They grew up in a world where they don't know a world where we're not connected to the internet. And so we can all look back and be like, well, I used to go out, and didn't come back until it was dark, and that's better. Okay. But that's not the reality of kids today. They want to have virtual experiences. They want to hang with their friends in games. And look what we do on a daily basis. We're in Zoom meetings and Teams all day, every day. I would argue that's also metaverse, right? We're not actually in the same room right now, and yet we're having a conversation. Now, that's going to get better. The technology that's behind it, nothing against Zoom, but it has its limitations, right? There's a latency lag where you and I can't jump in on each other's conversation like we would if we were sitting, hanging out over a beer and we're vibing off of each other's words. It doesn't do that well, right? The audio lags just a little bit. We can't look each other directly in the eye. You can manufacture it a little bit, but there's some new technologies coming out. Google's got one called Project Starline that I would absolutely Google. It's unbelievable what it can do. It's basically a magic mirror that you'll be able to see. Have you seen the renderings of this?
I have. I didn't realize it was called Project Starline. It's where yes, so it's like a Zoom call, but if it was 3-dimensional, right?
Correct. Yep. Yeah. You get a full sense that person is sitting across from a pane of glass. There's another. I'm drawing a blank. I think hologram technology is going to get to a point where you can be in the same physical space with someone. We're going to have a thing called 7D holograms, right? So it's 3D from multiple angles.
Wow.
And there's some, again, we're painting with all these visuals that people can't see, but you can Google. There's a 7D whale where it was in a mall in Dubai. And essentially a whale comes out of the floor and splashes back into the floor. And it's all done with 7D projectors. And that kind of technology is only going to improve our interactions. And we'll use that. So we won't necessarily need a headset. We could just be sitting having a conversation, and you're just going to be beamed into my office via my 7D projector that we're all going to have in 10 years. So, that kind of technology, I think, is what metaverse will transition into. I don't think it has to be all virtual reality all the time. Yeah. But, that's the going definition of what it is. Yeah. Virtual land, there's different platforms that you can buy virtual land on, and it's a finite resource, just like real world land. So that's why you pay someone who operates in one of these worlds. The two big ones are Decentraland and Sandbox. We're in Decentraland. JP Morgan Chase. A lot of the people, a little bit more corporate there. Although like Miller Lite and Heineken, there's bars in Decentraland that you can go hang in. Sandbox, that's where Snoop Dogg is. And on brand, there's a lot of like cannabis dispensaries in Sandbox where you can enter a dispensary and browse the the store, and everything in store is tokenized. So if it shows up in the metaverse, it exists in real life. You can interact with people in the metaverse. They can answer your questions about products.
Right.
You could purchase, and then you could have a delivery to your house in 30 minutes or less. Like, that kind of client experience is just wild. And it doesn't have to be, I think crypto and then cannabis, like these are all things that people are like, yeah, see, you lost me there. Look at Prada, Gucci, high-end fashion brands. They're all utilizing NFTs to create digital twins of their products to essentially eliminate fraud, right? Because if I can verify very quickly that the handbag that I just bought was manufactured by Gucci, then it's worth more, right? And suddenly the fake market, counterfeit market is less attractive because you can no longer fool people the way you used to be able to. Right. Gucci sold a virtual handbag for like $5,000 on these platforms that people are buying. And you could again say, well, that seems ridiculous. But look at back to Gen Z, they will spend countless sums of money, and I know this from personal experience, on virtual wearables, things that they want to wear on their avatar in the metaverse. And people say, well, that's dumb. And I'll say, well, tell me what kind of car do you drive? What kind of clothes do you like to wear? Well, I'm a BMW guy. That's really just projecting in the same way that a virtual, metaverse avatar is projecting who you are to the world. What clothes you buy, what cars you drive, the things that you post on social media, it's no different. It's all street credibility. It's a social flex to say, I buy this brand, or this brand identifies with me as a person. That's all kids are doing too. They want people to go, oh man, you're all about Travis Scott. And I know that because you got the exclusive Travis Scott backpack and hoodie that was only available at the virtual Travis Scott concert in Fortnite, which 15 million kids went to.
Wow.
So, it's wild stuff. But if I think if you get too far behind, it's going to be almost too difficult to catch back up. So everyone's question is like, where do I even start? Just little bites. Just don't be one of those people that turns it off and says, that's not a real thing that I need to worry about. That's going to be way too far down the road. It's here. It's, we're already using it right now. So just pay attention.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, the 15 million kids that showed up to virtual Travis or virtual Fortnite are going to be adults buying insurance policies at some point.
Correct.
And
they're going to be adults running insurance companies.
Yes, that too. And I think, I don't know that I definitely see a world where this technology is incorporated into the insurance experience itself. So, meetings, virtual meetings, even internal usage, right? As opposed to maybe not client to producer, but with having everybody in the same room. I mean, Heath and I are in Denver today, and I live in Minnesota. He lives in Arkansas, but coming to the office is special because we get to hang out together, spend time together. It's different over Zoom. You lose something over Zoom. So I think the more we can recreate what we lose in those in-person meetings, I think the more powerful that becomes. So I think there is some opportunity there, but more what I was thinking was if people are purchasing, if they're interacting in store-like environments and they're making purchases as opposed to going to Amazon.com, right? They're walking into the grocery store. They're going into the new metaverse Best Buy to get their headphones. Ultimately, still having them shipped to their house, right? But they're still going into the metaverse, taking them off the shelf, ringing it through the cash register. I think there's this idea of insurance being a part of that experience that you don't want to miss out on. And and the people who can make sure they're there, that's really, to me, how you have to think about it, is less what if somebody comes out of the virtual Best Buy? Are they going to see Row Insurance on that block, right? That's how I'm thinking about some of this is, it really is almost recreating your insurance agency digitally in a way.
100%. And think about, when I first got into insurance, and my only experience thus far had been auto insurance that I bought that I didn't like. It cost too much money, and that was my experience, like most people. And someone explained to me, they're like, look around the world, we're on a city street, and they're like, look around the street. Literally everything you can point to requires insurance, right? It's a building that someone cares about. It's a person that someone cares about, a vehicle, the traffic lights, like literally in order to make the world go, insurance is required. So if that's true, and if we believe that the metaverse might be part of the future, it represents an entirely new world to be insured. So why would you not look at that as an opportunity to say, whether or not, it's going to be as big as the real world, it's still a new opportunity and new assets to be insured. Those headphones, I could create a micro insurance product, match it up with Best Buy. So as soon as they're checking out, do you want to insure this?
Right.
Sure.
Right.
$5 annual policy. And if anything happens to my headphones, just new models. And we don't do well with that. That's the limitation in the space where my challenge to insurers is there's a lot of new products that need to be developed that don't look like traditional insurance products. That's because these assets operate differently, and people expect an insurance product that can be turned on or off. Like, well, if I have my crypto assets on a cold wallet, means it's not touching the internet, then I'm not worried about it. I don't need insurance on that, right? But I am concerned when it goes hot and I need to transact or move funds from one place to another. I need an insurance policy for that moment in time where I'm transacting those funds. That's just not, drone insurance is another perfect example. Well, I don't want to insure my drone on a 12-month policy. I don't use it all 12 months of the year. But when I'm flying it in a park once a month, I'd like to insure it, in the event that it falls out of the sky and hits somebody. Then I want to make sure I've got the coverage. So I need policies that can be turned on, off, operate differently than the traditional insurance contracts. But to your point, I think training is going to be huge. So, if you've not experimented with like an Oculus, there are workrooms where you can have a virtual meeting, and it's kind of shocking the first time you do it, how real it feels. It feels like you're in the room with people, and the sound, there's something magical about the sound. You can hear, papers rustling. You just get the sense that you're in the room with people. And I think that experience is going to be something that we just build on top of. And, a big challenge for us, and I know a lot of people, is work from home. We're a, remote friendly, but it's a challenge in our industry. How much did you learn by hanging out with people and just listening to conversations, or having an experience in, one day on a Tuesday that you still talk about? Like that kind of experience we're missing in the industry. And if you could have a virtual meeting that wasn't gimmicky, it didn't feel like a video game, but felt like a regular part of your week where we're going to go in for training as a group. We're going to have a mentor that's going to work with us, build up our skill sets in a virtual environment that feels real. Then I think we can do a whole lot with training, education. I think the education sector is going to be massively transformed with, we're going to teach more towards aptitudes rather than, all right, everybody gets the same playbook and sucks you're not good at math. You got to do it. And you got to do all these other subjects that you don't like or care about. It's going to be like, no, what are you wired for? Let's build a path for you for that, rather than trying to train everybody to be the exact same. Like, who wants that?
Right.
And then marketing, right? There's a whole new, what's the number one Google AdWord or Facebook AdWord? It's insurance, right? So it's only a matter of time before the metaverse, that's just a brand new opportunity for putting your brand out there, getting people's eyes on, oh, Row Insurance. I don't know about them. I'll step in and see what they're all about. That looks fun. Their experience looks cool. I'll give them a shot. So,
man, this was a fascinating conversation. I don't know whether to be excited or terrified, or probably a little bit of both. But thank you, Garrett. Thank you for the work that you've been doing, and for carving out some time and coming to talk about what you've learned and share your experiences. Really appreciate it.
Anytime. Thanks, Sid.
Love what you heard? Listen, don't stop here. We know you don't want to. Hit subscribe on your favorite podcast platform or YouTube if you love watching, and get notified as soon as new episodes come out weekly. Let's go.